Playback. Some places hold memories captive. They wait in the dust motes, dancing in the slanted afternoon light. They linger in the pine-scented air. They sleep in the cold, dark water. For Leo, this lake house was a mausoleum of laughter, a monument to a time before the silence. He stood on the porch, the weathered wood groaning under his weight like an old man's sigh, and stared at the water. It was a sheet of polished obsidian under the bruised twilight sky, and it offered no reflections. His hand trembled as he slid the key into the lock. The metallic scrape was obscenely loud, a vulgar intrusion on the sanctity of the quiet. The door swung inward, releasing a breath of stale, chilled air that smelled of wood smoke and regret. Inside, everything was just as they had left it. A faded flannel shirt, Sam's, was still draped over the back of a wicker chair. A half-finished crossword puzzle lay on the coffee table, Clara's elegant cursive filling some of the boxes. A ghost of her perfume, something floral and defiant, seemed to cling to the very molecules of the air. It was a perfect, heartbreaking diorama of a life that had ended 3 years ago. His life, in many ways, had ended with it. He'd come here to remember, to try and find the good parts again, to scrape away the rot and the grief, and find the warmth that once lived in this hollow space. His therapist had called it reclaiming the narrative. Leo just called it torture. His fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled with the clasp of his overnight bag. He pulled out an old, beat-up MP3 player, its once gleaming silver case now scratched and dented. He'd found it in a box of his old things, and charging it had felt like an act of necromancy. He scrolled through the list of songs, his thumb hovering over the one title that mattered. Their song, the one that had been the anthem of that final summer. He pressed play. A simple, optimistic guitar riff filled the oppressive silence of the cabin. The sound was tinny and small coming from the cheap earbuds, but in Leo's mind, it was a symphony. As the memory bloomed, vibrant and overwhelming, the cabin around him seemed to brighten. The tinny music in his ears was suddenly layered with the rich ambient sounds of a summer day, distant laughter, the splash of water, the insistent buzz of a dragonfly. He was on the dock, the sun hot on his shoulders. Clara was beside him, her head thrown back in a laugh that made the whole world feel right. Her red hair was a bonfire against the deep blue of the sky. Sam was in the water, a sleek, powerful shape, his voice echoing across the lake as he yelled, "Are you just gonna stand there, or are you gonna jump right in?" The memory was so real, Leo could feel the phantom heat of the sun, taste the cheap beer they were drinking. The music was the soundtrack, the driving beat a perfect match for the frantic, joyful rhythm of their hearts. "Come on, Leo," Clara shouted in his memory, her voice a mix of challenge and affection. Sink or swim. He had jumped. The memory of the cold, shocking embrace of the water was a welcome relief. They had spent the whole day out there, 3 of them against the world, immortal in the summer sun. The song on the MP3 player was their promise to each other. "I won't let you go in the undertow," a promise to endure, to face the overwhelming waves together. The track ended, and the sudden silence in his ears was violent. The vivid memory collapsed, pulling the light and warmth from the room with it. Leo was left standing in the dim, dusty cabin, his own breath sounding ragged in his ears. His heart ached with a familiar, crushing weight. He pressed play again. The music returned, but as it did, a subtle, discordant hum began to weave itself underneath the cheerful guitar. The memory flickered back into existence. The dock, the sun, but something was off. The edges of the scene seemed to shimmer with a strange, oily haze. Sam's voice echoed again from the water, but this time the words were distorted, The friendly challenge curdled into something that sounded like a taunt. Sink or swim, Leo. Clara's laugh was still there, but it was sharper now, the edges brittle, on the verge of cracking. He could feel the sun on his skin, but now a chill snaked up his spine, a cold that had nothing to do with the lake. He tried to focus on the good part, on Clara's smile, but her face kept twisting. For a split second, her loving gaze was replaced by a flash of something else. Fear. Betrayal. He blinked, and it was gone. Just a trick of the light, a phantom of his grief. He let the song play on repeat, a desperate attempt to force the memory back into its proper, comforting shape. But with each playback, the corruption grew. The cheerful guitar riff began to sound like a discordant warning. The sound of their laughter became thin and mocking. The gentle lapping of the lake against the dock started to sound like a hungry, impatient mouth. He remembered the boat. Later that day, the storm that had rolled in without warning, the sky turning from a placid blue to a bruised, angry purple in minutes. That part of the memory had always been a chaotic blur of sound, the roar of the wind, the percussive slam of the rain, the panicked shouts swallowed by the gale. He was the only one who had made it back to shore, the lone survivor, the heartbroken friend. But now, as the song played its insidious, looping melody, new sounds bled into the chaos of the storm. Underneath the wind he could hear an argument, his own voice, sharp and ugly. "You promised!" A furious accusation, but what was he even talking about? He heard Clara's reply, not a scream of fear at the storm, but a sob of fury. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Leo." The MP3 player felt slick in his hand. The happy anthem of their friendship was now the score to a horror film. He wanted to rip the earbuds out, to crush the device under his heel, but he couldn't. He had to know. He had to see what was behind the static of his own mind. He closed his eyes, forcing the memory into focus as the song began its fourth loop. The boat bucked on the churning waves. Sam was at the tiller, his face grim, fighting to keep them from capsizing. Clara was huddled in the middle, her red hair plastered to her face, no longer a bonfire but a clot of blood in the gloom. And Leo was standing, unsteady, his hands not reaching to help but clenched into fists. The argument was clear now, the words sharp and cruel, cutting through the storm's roar. It wasn't about the storm. It was about secrets, about a promise Clara had broken. The undertow they had sworn to face together had been a lie. "I won't let you go," he heard himself scream over the wind, the words from their song now a venomous threat. He saw himself lunge, not towards Clara, but towards Sam. A shove, a sickening solid impact. Sam's surprised cry was stolen by a gust of wind as he tumbled over the side. The memory snapped. He didn't see Sam hit the water. He just saw Clara's face, her eyes wide with a terror that had nothing to do with the waves and everything to do with him. Her mouth opened, a name on her lips, Sam's. But then the boat lurched violently. It was her turn. He didn't remember pushing. He just remembered a flash of red hair against the black water, and then nothing. The song in his ears faded out, leaving a profound and terrifying silence. The cabin was pitch black now, the sun having bled out of the sky completely. Leo stood in the center of the room, the truth a physical weight inside him, a cancer that had been metastasizing in the dark for 3 years. He wasn't the grieving survivor. He was the monster. The heartbreak wasn't his, it was theirs. The tragedy wasn't an accident, it was a judgment. The only sound was the gentle rhythmic lapping of the lake against the shore just outside, a sound he had always found peaceful, but now it sounded different. It was a soft, wet whisper, a patient, waiting sound. It sounded like a body heavy with water, pulling itself onto the sand. Then another. A single wet footstep squelched on the wooden porch, just outside the door. He didn't need to see. He knew. He had promised them he would never let them go. And from the darkness, from the cold, deep water, they had returned to hold him to his word. The undertow had finally come for him.